You're listening to the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast, a show that's dedicated to cultivating intention, awareness, and flow in business and life. Join your host, Nicole Harlow, and other like-minded business owners in the Spirited Entrepreneur community over at www.thesepodreview.com.
I saw the sun.
Hi, and welcome to the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Harlow. I want to use my time here to not only welcome you warmly to the show, but also to explain the motivation and ethos of the show. So I believe that all pieces of business and life are interconnected, and with each new episode, I'm going to attempt to bridge the gap between typical business, marketing, and social media advice, and the lessons of awareness, mindfulness, and intention. This podcast will cover a variety of topics connected to the life and work of running a business, but with a specific focus on infusing the mundane realities of entrepreneurship with three broad categories. Those categories being planning and working with intention, cultivating awareness in all aspects of life, and achieving a state of flow and ease in your work. The material in the Spirited Entrepreneur podcast draws from a combination of interviews with industry leaders, reader questions, psychology, science, philosophy, spirituality, meditation, practical advice, and anecdotal stories of my own experience of almost a decade of entrepreneurship. When combined, each of these strands weaves together to create a rich tapestry of knowledge that's here for you to use at any time to grow and evolve, not only as a business owner, but also as a person. At its essence, what I'm really looking to provide is both a sacred, safe space for you to learn, expand, and feel inspired in work and life. I love this quote by the writer Joseph Campbell that I think really typifies the ethos of the Spirited Entrepreneur podcast. He writes, "If you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while waiting for you. And the life that you ought to be living is the one you are living. Wherever you are, if you're following your bliss, you're enjoying that refreshment, that life within you, all the time." We'll explore this concept together by engaging with topics like uncovering your big why in business, creating daily rituals for increasing productivity, and the importance of creative space as a business owner, but also as a human. As Joseph Campbell also reminds us, this creative space is a place where you can simply experience and bring forth what you are and what you might be. This is the place of creative incubation. At first you may find that nothing happens there, but if you have a sacred place and use it, something eventually will happen. And so I feel that by taking the time to sit, listen, and reflect with this podcast, you're actively giving yourself the permission to allow this creative incubation to take place. And that combination of attention and intention creates a powerful alchemy that will touch all aspects of your life. Because in the words of Annie Dillard, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. And in this podcast, I'm going to be making the case that presence is just as important, if not more important, than productivity. But I do understand and I agree that productivity, financial success, and business growth are also really important factors. So in this podcast, you can also expect to hear episodes where we'll focus on techniques and growth strategies that will really leverage the knowledge of great entrepreneurs who have already cleared the path before us. So when I was starting this podcast, I sat down and I wanted to figure out what my goal was for the podcast. And it came to me really clearly. I wanted to create a show that seamlessly integrates practical advice for business owners, things like marketing, social media, design, and copywriting, with the knowledge that comes from cognitive psychology, philosophy, and advancements in the study of flow states, things like creativity, habit forming, productivity, and success. A show that you can savor and refer back to time and time again for tips to build a better business and also a more mindful and happy life.
I want to get you. 'Cause I want to get you.
So you may be wondering at this point who I am and what my story is, and I thought that this inaugural episode would really be a great place for me to tell you more about myself and my work. So I think I'm the perfect example of what some people would call a serial entrepreneur. And for almost a decade now, I've tried my hand, sometimes spectacularly unsuccessfully, at lots of different business ideas, from handmade goods to teaching, to writing and design. And for several years, I taught yoga, dance, and meditation classes around the world. And even though I don't teach any public classes anymore, I still see the effects of those years of practice really reflected. And so most of the creative projects that I've worked on were born out of an intense curiosity and what I would describe as an almost childish impulsiveness to just get started now. And this has definitely left some projects dangling half finished, but it's also taught me really how to stay lean and flexible as a business owner. And speaking of lean, I would say that no account of my story will be complete without conversation about leanness in business. When I first started as an entrepreneur, I didn't even have a penny to my name. I was deeply in debt with student loans and working really crappy jobs just to pay my rent. So out of sheer necessity, I learned how to bootstrap every aspect of my business, from making my own websites to marketing and copywriting. Basically, if it had to be done to move my business forward, I learned how to do it, trying to find some free resource or YouTube video. And what I lamented at the time really turned out to be what I see as one of my greatest strengths as an entrepreneur. Having worked all sides of my business, I've become a more compassionate, knowledgeable teacher and also an articulate delegator. I guess a few more things that you should know about me are that in 2013, I published my book, Chakra Detox, which went on to become an international bestseller. Yay. And about 2,000 of my articles on health, wellness, and entrepreneurship have been published all over the web. Currently, I'm the creative director of my own design studio, which is Nicole Harlow Design, and I do lead branding, design, and copywriting courses over on my other site, which is at brandbetter.co. And another little fun fact about me is that I'm also a huge science nerd, so I'm working on a science magazine called Geometry. I was raised in Philly, but I'm really happy to call my home the tiny Mediterranean island of Malta. In 2014, I achieved a huge lifelong dream of mine, which is location independence, and I moved here to Malta to live what I see as my perfect life by the peaceful Mediterranean Sea, where I spend a lot of time down at the beach meditating and just, enjoying myself before and after work. And now, before we get down to the show and you move on to deeper episodes, there's just a few small things that I wanted to point out. The first is just really to let you know that there's a thriving digital community aspect of this podcast. It's a place for you to meet other spirited entrepreneurs, find an accountability partner, get inspired, and share your business. You'll find your invitation as well as other details about the show on thesepod.com. That's thesepod.com. And secondly, I'd really love to invite you to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. Once you've left a review, I do things a little bit differently. So if you want, you can take a screenshot of it and email the screenshot to thesepodreview@gmail.com. That's thesepodreview@gmail.com. And you'll be automatically entered into a monthly contest to win a Spirited Entrepreneur gift pack. You can find any additional instructions about how to subscribe and leave a review, plus things like show notes, how to submit a question, recommend a guest, or contact me at thesepod.com, thesepod.com. And you can also find me on Twitter at Hey Nicole Harlow.
You say you're so hard to learn until I know
The Spirited Entrepreneur podcast is sponsored by the folks over at Audible. They've been really generous and have offered an audiobook of your choice completely free to all listeners of the show. Some of my favorites that you can read for free on Audible include The Gift of Imperfection by Brené Brown, Amy Poehler's Yes Please, Paul Smith's Lead with a Story, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, or Napoleon Hill's classic Think and Grow Rich. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/spirited. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spirited. And download any of the audiobooks I just mentioned or choose from one of the 180,000 titles available. This is Nicole Harlow, and until next time, have a great day.